through the FBI and U.S. attorneys' offices is something that candidates, but all of us, need to pay attention to, because, as Basil was suggesting, this is a turnout election. This is about making sure your people feel energized to actually show up. That's why they're fear-mongering.
Yep.
Larry, do you think that there is a race out there right now that people aren't talking quite enough about? I think about North Carolina, for example. Roy Cooper, household name, entity there. I think a lot of Democrats think he's going to pretty easily sail to victory. He's doing very well in the polls right now. But is there any place where you would caution them to not be too comfortable, too optimistic? Or is there another area where they actually may have a shot and the party or the base just aren't really thinking about it right now?
Well, first, let me just make a quick comment on North Carolina. We kept that for a long time at toss-up, even though all of the polls really suggested that Roy Cooper was well ahead. But he was rarely at 50 or over. And if you look at the modern history of North Carolina, the Republicans in federal elections tend to do very, very well for president, Senate, House of Representatives, and even at the state level for the legislature. So we wanted to be convinced that this was real. And we're now convinced that it is. It takes a lot of evidence, at least for us, to move a race. Now, as far as others are concerned, I've had a lot of people say to me, oh, come on, you can't be serious about Alaska. Alaska is not going to go Democratic. Well, normally, of course, it wouldn't go Democratic. And it certainly won't be by a landslide if, in fact, it does go Democratic. But you have in Mary Peltola a candidate who got elected to the U.S. House of Representatives under their unusual system of election from Alaska. She's already been able to do that. And the Republican incumbent does not have Mr. Sullivan. There are two Sullivans on the ballot.
Yeah, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, well, one of them has been kind of thrown off, but I think maybe the courts will put him back on. But whatever happens there, the Republican incumbent is clearly worried. If he weren't worried, he wouldn't have put so much time and effort along with the party, national and state, to debunk this other Dan Sullivan. They're worried about every vote, and they should be. They should be, because he doesn't have that strong an image in Alaska. He's not like some of the senators that we used to know, like Mike Gravel and others, who were around for a long time, and Alaskans could tell you a lot about him. They really don't. They really don't know Sullivan all that well, no matter what he says. So I would continue to watch Alaska, continue to watch Iowa, obviously Texas. We haven't moved that away from lean R. We may eventually go to toss up. It's certainly moving in that direction. But we're, as I say, we're a little hesitant to move things until the evidence really accumulates. I like a mountain because I'm older and I can't see well. The younger members of my team are happy with a hill.
But in January, several Ohio factories announced plans to close, including a Conn-Selmer instrument plant in Eastlake, which is near Cleveland. The plant's billionaire owner, John Paulson, a close ally of President Trump, is sending all those jobs to China. Annette Dombrowski is a three-time Trump voter and a janitor at that Eastlake plant. At the end of this month, she will now be out of a job. MS Now reporter Alex Tabbitt sat down with her at her home last week, asked her about being laid off and whether she thinks President Trump understands what she is going through.
I actually have panic attacks. I've had a couple this past week. And I get very emotional over it. I don't want to work anymore, but I can't afford to retire.
Obviously, President Trump is immensely wealthy, has been wealthy since he was born.
Yeah.
Do you think he understands?
No. No. He hasn't lived it to understand it. He sees it, he has not lived it. He needs to live it. Wear the clothes, wear the shoes, wear your Walmart clothes, wear your Walmart shoes. Do your thrift store shopping. Don't eat steaks. I don't get to go out to dinner. It's not an overnight thing, but it's been 2 years now. You said you'd bring down the grocery prices. Literally, I must be the most angry person when I grocery shop because I buy the same things every week. And I see It jumps every week. It is not every couple months. It's literally every week.
Alex also spoke with another three-time Trump voter, a man named Chris Tackett, a trucker from Ohio, who said he's fed up with the president's broken promises.
When President Trump said he wasn't going to start foreign wars, when he said he was going to bring down prices, did you believe him?
Yeah. I mean, his first term, I think he held true to everything that he said he was going to do. I think he fought for everything he said he was going to fight for. This time around, I haven't seen it. He's backtracked on every single pitch point he had during his election. He's backtracking on. All we heard was drill, drill, drill during the election, and now all we're getting is drilled into the dirt with these prices. So I'm not a fan of him. I voted for Trump all 3 terms. To be honest with you, I'm not a big supporter of him at this point.
If you could talk directly to President Trump, what would you tell him right now?
Get it together, man. The average American is struggling to make ends meet right now. And nobody wants to hear the war's almost over. Nobody wants to hear it's going to get better. You've had a year to make it better at this point. Make it better. I voted for Trump all 3 terms. To be honest with you, I'm not a big supporter of him at this point. Due to the economy and due to gas prices, due to Epstein files and some other things.
You said you'd bring down the grocery prices. Literally, I must be the most angry person when I grocery shop because I buy the same things every week and I see it jump every week.
If you could pick one word to describe the economy right now, what would that one word be?
The gutter. The gutter. It's in the gutter.
What would you, if you could talk to President Trump directly right now, what would you tell him?
Do you want me to really say it on air? I say, you.
F you, and your economy is in the gutter. Those are not my words. Those are not the words of anyone with a Biden or a Harris lawn sign in their yards over the last 10 years. Those were people who voted for Donald Trump 18 months ago. And it is not a good sign when your very recent voters and your political base starts to sound angrier than anyone who thought Democrats should have impeached you. MS Now Alex Tabbitt spoke to now ex-supporters of Donald Trump's as anger continues to grow over Donald Trump's second term as president. It's not just his base that's angry, though. Elected Republicans are increasingly finding the, spine or something else to break with him publicly over his handling of the economy, and his handling of the war in Iran, his handling of the Epstein files, and his insistence on backing candidates in Republican primaries who seem very unlikely to win in November's midterms. Texas Senator John Cornyn sat down with the New York Times after losing the Texas Republican Senate primary. Donald Trump backed his embattled, to put it politely, challenger in that race, Texas's Attorney General Ken Paxton. Cornyn told the New York Times this, quote, "If that's the way friends treat you, you wonder about his enemies." Adding, quote, "I think it's going to be a pretty bumpy ride for the next 7 months. I don't say that with any sort of desire for vengeance. I just think that's the way it's going to be. He's going to have the most miserable 2 years of his life in the last 2 years of his term, I think, because I think November is going to be a disaster." Joining our coverage, Media Matters for America President Angelo Carasone. Tim is still here. Tim, I have to sort of put a pin in all my disgust with all these people who are saying now what a lot of us have been saying for a decade. I'll deal with that in therapy. But you do see elected Republicans in public interviews articulating the true political reality, which is sort of the other half of the rigging of the elections that I think is important, because you have to get in front of Trump's own voters, that he's cheating because Republicans are telling him he's going to lose in a catastrophic political way.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to do something nice for you here. It's a Friday. I don't think you got to put a pin in your disgust for John Cornyn. I think that you can embrace that, and you can enjoy the Schadenfreude, and you can continue to mock him. For the voters, I get it. I think that's smart and prudent because it's important to win people over. But John Cornyn said he's going to oppose Trump. In that same interview, he was blunt about how Trump's going to have a bad 2 years, though. I don't know. I think maybe John Cornyn's misassessing Donald Trump and what he cares about. Donald Trump might have a fine 2 years just golfing and redesigning the East Wing and building a big arch. And I don't know. We'll see. I think he's gonna have a bad 2 years in the traditional political sense, things that people John
Right.
Cornyn care about. Like they're not going to pass anything in Congress. He's going to get investigated. He won't get impeached again. So I thought it was pretty striking in that Cornyn interview, though, that he says basically, well, now I have a little bit more freedom. But the nice thing about being an ex-senator, I'm paraphrasing, but he says this, is that ex-senators make more money. And it's just like, it's just so gross. You can see these guys.
So
and now they can
gross.
say a little bit of truth, right? And they're like, I can get a little bit of distance for Trump. I can pick a couple things now where I can finally be my own man instead of just being Trump's doormat. But I can't do too much still, because I want to be able to lobby when it's over. I want to be able to make money still after it's over. It's just, you can understand why Donald Trump so easily ran over the husk of the establishment Republican Party. So look, I think that there's a lot of anger out there.
One of the biggest stories developing right now isn't just that Republicans are losing ground. It's why they're losing ground. We're seeing a pattern emerge. Republicans keep nominating candidates who create unnecessary problems for the party, while Democrats are increasingly finding candidates who fit their states and connect with voters. Sometimes it's candidate quality, sometimes it's messaging, sometimes it's both. But either way, these primary decisions are setting the stage for general election trouble. Look at Texas. The Republican nomination of Paxton alongside the Democratic rise of Tallarico creates a difficult matchup for the GOP. Tallarico isn't a traditional Democrat, and that's exactly what makes him dangerous. In the right environment, he's the kind of candidate who can compete in places Democrats usually struggle. Meanwhile, Republicans chose a MAGA candidate in a state where they didn't need to take that kind of risk. Texas should have been a relatively comfortable defensive position. Instead, they've turned it into a race that could require major resources and national attention. That's why more election analysts are starting to argue that the Senate map is gradually shifting toward Democrats. And it's not only happening in classic swing states. Take Alaska. It's not a presidential battleground, but suddenly it's becoming a highly competitive Senate race. Why? Because Democrats recruited a strong candidate while Republicans are relying on someone who isn't generating much enthusiasm. That's a recurring theme we're seeing across the country. Now, political junkies like us can spend hours talking about strategy, candidate recruitment, fundraising, and polling trends. And yes, all of that matters, but most voters aren't thinking about any of that. Most voters are thinking about their paycheck. They're thinking about rent, groceries, gas prices, and whether life is getting easier or harder. And that's where Donald Trump is running into a serious problem. He made a lot of promises to working class Americans. He promised lower costs, stronger wages, and a better future for ordinary people. But for many voters, those promises haven't translated into real improvements in their daily lives. Politics isn't always complicated. Sometimes voters simply ask one question: am I better off than I was before? For a growing number of Americans, the answer appears to be no. That's why blue-collar workers, working families, and everyday voters are becoming frustrated. It's not because they're obsessed with campaign strategy or Senate math. It's because they're looking at their own situation and deciding that the results don't match the promises. And that's a problem Republicans can't easily spin away. Because regular Americans trying to make ends meet aren't some niche voting bloc. They're the majority of the electorate.